Hey guys, so I just was made aware that there's a tribe in Scotland. Um, you know, bunch of Wakandans basically, to put it mildly. Bunch of Wakandans, because that's what I'm calling them from now on. Wakandans. You know, the people that say we were samurai, we were kings and queens, we actually were natives to the Americas. We did all of this shit, even though uh, 80% of Africa is a shithole. And I'd say maybe 40% of those people are living in, mud huts and shit like that. I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm just saying, yeah, you really didn't. You really weren't. Sorry. But apparently now, there's a cult in Scotland that claims that they were the original uh, rulers of Scotland. Which is funny because Scotland was never called Scotland until, I mean, I'd say fairly recently. I mean, it's not like, yesterday or 100 years ago or anything. It was actually called like Pickland or something like that. It was uh, the Picts, the Picts, the Gales. There was another group of people I can't remember. Um, I'm not a historian, but I know it at least a little bit, right? So you couldn't have been in control of Scotland before it was called Scotland, but you call it Scotland. It's not That's not how it works. So obviously this is a cult and a bunch of Wakandan liars. You know what I mean? Like, come on. So what they're doing is they're camping out in the woods. And they're calling it a Kubala, because that's a very European sounding word, Kubala. Because those other people um, were never white people never had anything ever. Apparently, because black people ruled 100% of the world, I guess. Next, they'll say, well, we were originally the rulers of China until the Mongols came down. But we also ruled Mongolia too. Nigga, please. Okay? That's all I gotta say is nigga, please stop. Just take a breath. Okay? Just because you hate yourself and you hate whatever your history was does not mean that you ruled over everything. You were not kings and queens. I'm sorry. You weren't. White people weren't kings and queens except for, in Europe. But like my family's never been a king or a queen. Just the way it is. And I'm sorry that it sucks to hear that as a fact. Did you have kings and queens? Maybe in Sudan. Maybe. It's like when black folks say, we built the pyramids, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, you really didn't. Egypt, which would be technically southern because the Nile runs south to north. So Egypt is technically southern. Sudan is northern. In Sudan and sub-Saharan countries, yes, they were black people. But in Egypt, they were, if you were to classify them, they'd be Caucasian. They're not white, but they're Caucasian. Just like how um, Middle Eastern people, they're not white, but they're still technically Caucasian. If that makes any sense to you. If it doesn't, just Google it, okay? It's a fact. So like Indian people, they're technically Caucasian, but they're not white. That's why we have different things. We can all be Caucasian, we can't all be white. Anyways, so these people are harassing the Scottish locals, begging for food and money, stealing livestock. And some of the Scottish people, like, you gotta remember, the Scots don't fuck around. Some of the Scots are like throwing rocks, beating them, ripping down their tents. And I'm okay with that. Because the only way to get rid of these crazy cults, and it sucks to say, is through violence. It's just the way it is. If you remember Waco, now, of course, the government went a little overboard. But remember, David Koresh was raping women and children, females. At least he wasn't gay, Jesus. But he was doing really bad things with women and children. And they were hoarding guns, preparing for whatever kind of thing that he was preparing for. I remember this. And the ATF and government came in and said, screw this. We're just going to kill all of you. No, they shouldn't have killed the kids. And, a lot of children died. But you know what? That's kind of what happens. That's what happens in war. And that's literally a war. You're not making it safe for anybody else around you. If you don't stamp it out right now, it's going to become a bigger problem. And that's the same thing that's happening over in Scotland. And I call for people to maybe not murder, but deal with it. I call for the Scots to deal with that situation, because if you don't, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And the next thing you know, you're going to get attacked. You need to be proactive on this. Because these Wakandans that just make up shit, and you have these young black children, black women, mostly black women, that are just on board for it because maybe they have mental issues. Maybe they feel a certain type of way. But if you give them an idea like, you can be a queen, this is our land, it has always been our land, and it was stolen from us, you can mold their mind to the point where they just agree with it and they go with it. And then, what's going to happen? They're going to be raped. Guarantee it. They're going to become, because the leader, the king, already has 2 wives. He's going to have more. Guarantee it. And let's say a black woman and her daughter come in. Guess what's going to happen to your daughter? We ain't stupid. We've seen this happen multiple times. We're not dumb. So the best way to deal with this, unfortunately, is through violence. It's just the way it has to be. That's what war is. And this is war against Scotland. So, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Get the reference. Forrest Gump. Oh. Anyways, have a nice day.